Chapter is talking about the deer problem.
The council appoints the members, right?
Yes, to that.
Yeah. So we've got some here.
Welcome to the August 5th regular meeting of the Abingdon Town Council. Thank you all for coming out. We really appreciate your interest in our local government and also your participation. Kim, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Ms. Quetch?
Here.
Mr. Webb?
Here.
Ms. Patterson?
Here.
Mayor Crick?
Here. We'll ask Vice Mayor Patterson if she'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the United States of America
Of the United States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is public comments, and the first speaker will be Mr. Emmett Urey. Mr. Urey, we all know where you live, and we all know who you are, so you don't have to do any of that.
Well, I'm afraid from where I live, you might come after me. Thank you very much. I came here tonight to address, I think it's one of the most serious subjects that I've had the fortune or misfortune to have to think that I needed to come before you. And that's concerning the possible relocation of the court and the shutting down of the court system and basically moving the courthouse.
Hold on just a minute, Emmett, I don't think they can, the mic's on or something.
All right, somebody turn the mic on. All right. All right, I'll start over again if I may.
Sure.
Can you hear me back there, Chief? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Anybody can't hear me back there, just yell. I say I'm here tonight because I felt I was almost on a mission, a calling. Never quite felt that before for many years. But one of the most serious matters that I think that questions that was come before the town in the 50 or so years that I've been here. I came here a little over 50 years ago, right after law school, stayed here about 3 months. I loved the place. Gladly went to the United States Army, where I was there for about 3 years, and returned to Abingdon because I thought it was one of the most beautiful places on earth, and it still is. During the ensuing years, however, while I was here, in spite of this beauty on the surface, I began to observe some of the underside of the community, which all communities have. There was always a sense of people judging or being judged by what they had or did not have, or what position they held or did not have, as to how you would be, the quality or your worth could be judged in this community. The town's government, nepotism and cronyism grew worse over the years. Who you knew or who you were related to might mean whether you got or kept your job, whether you got approval or disapproval of a simple street sign for your business often seemed to turn on who you were or who you knew. There was a great apathy of the citizens who did not know or who did not bother to take time to learn how the system worked unless it affected them personally. Even whole neighborhoods were affected and impacted by the way things were done then. Kings Mountain and Taylor's Hill community, predominantly African American citizens, were ignored for years with lack of proper fire protection, fire hydrants, street lights, playgrounds, and could not even get cable TV there for years. The children there could not watch Sesame Street while the other folks in town could, and the children in other parts of the town. They couldn't even watch baseball on Saturdays. That was then generally only seen on cable TV. But that was rectified. Fortunately, much of that changed to the good and things began to improve. But the cronyism and nepotism continued. There was one major improvement toward equality, however, and ironically, the Good Old Boys Club was also joined now by the Good Old Girls Club. Now there was equal opportunity for nepotism and cronyism for both sexes. But business continued as usual. In spite of this, and sometimes to be fair, because of this system, the town was pretty well run, and equality for all seemed to be within reach. Unfortunately, that trend toward fair treatment for all has recently been drastically reversed, the likes of which this town has never seen, certainly not in my half a century here. It appears that we're being asked to go back to those dark days of opportunities being based upon who you are or how much money you have and how much influence you can buy with that money. On July the 1st, 2019, just about a month ago, there was a town council meeting being held at the Barter Theater. And as one citizen said, that was an appropriate place because it was a stage show. There, the best and the worst of the citizens' character was on display. Ironically, it was a fight over a weenie. We're fighting for our survival in this country, and we're talking about weenies and getting crowds out. We have nobody here, but we had a crowd out fighting over weenies. It was pathetic. The behavior exhibited and displayed by certain citizens was a warning of things to come. Although I was not here at the time, I watched it later on the internet and observed people basically baiting the issue of a hot dog stand. On one hand, I saw citizens passionately but respectfully requesting whether the law and the ordinances of this town had been properly applied, whether they were right or wrong. That was their position, and they addressed that very respectfully to this council, as I observed on the internet. On the other hand, I saw people being manipulated to behave in a near mob-like frenzy to show and display hatred and bigotry toward anyone who might differ from their opinion and their fellow citizens. It was shameful and it was embarrassing. It reminded me of the tactics of the old movies where spectators in the Roman Colosseum were being brought to a frenzy, calling for the death of a gladiator or Christian. But worse, the people trying to incite this mob mentality and belittling other citizens were some of the town's leading citizens. It seemed they were enjoying seeing people belittled and suggesting they might even be communists because they had a different position on a hot dog stand. That is not the Abingdon I knew and came to love and still love. And that's not the Abingdon that we want to continue. Nowhere did I see a display of love in the room that night, in spite of the fact that we see love signs all over town and all over Abingdon. The love signs on that night seemed to be totally misleading and the height of hypocrisy. I believe the spectacle of July the 1st was foreboding of what is coming in the next round of the survival of this town. Now today, tomorrow, and the months to come, we will be fighting for the soul and integrity of this town. As you know, there is a concerted and professionally orchestrated effort and scheme to close the county courthouse and move the court to a shopping center in the old Kmart building. Even the town manager is being wrongfully misquoted by saying, well, the town is indifferent, doesn't care. Well, that indifference needs to be addressed and rectified if we are to keep this town surviving. There is no doubt that the county courthouse, and I've practiced there for more than 50 years in many courts around the country, not only in this state but others. So I know there is a need, and has been for some time, for many updates, and the courthouse needs to be expanded. More parking needs to be available for the users of the courthouse as well as the businesses around the courthouse. It is the duty of government to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of citizens. Along that line is the duty of the town to provide for the appropriate parking place for its citizens, not only around the courthouse but all over town. In today's motorized world, this includes the duty to provide adequate parking for the citizens as visitors to the town. Likewise, the town has a duty to join with the county. Not just to say it's just the county's problem, it is a town problem. We are a community that we need to work and fight together for our survival. So many around the world are fighting to see that we cannot survive, so we must join together. So likewise, the town has a duty to join with the county to provide adequate parking to the citizens using the courthouse. One of the arguments that the county has, even though the present location, it's been shown by studies that they haven't really revealed to the public, it'd be $1 million less to renovate the courthouse at its present location to meet all the needs in the foreseeable future. $1 million less what it would be at the Kmart. Now that would be $1 million you could go toward parking. If you could join that with the town, you could have adequate parking there at many different locations. There are many options on the table, but you need to come forward and say, yes, we will partner with you. We want that courthouse here. We want the vitality of this town to continue, and we will work with you as a team. So there are those options available. You have to let it be known to them loud and clear, in my opinion, that you want the courthouse here, and you will do what is reasonably necessary to work with the county and all to see that it stays where it is. But now we have those who would, out of outright avarice and insatiable greed, capitalize on this need and have the courthouse closed and move the court to an interstate highway shopping center in total disregard of what this would mean to the history and well-being and the integrity of the town. In the next coming days and months, I expect that you can see a professional campaign being orchestrated, trying to convince the citizens that the court needs to be moved in only one place, to the Kmart location, to a shopping center beside the interstate, under the guise that it's good for the citizenry, when in fact it is only good to fill the pockets of the proponents and their puppets and stooges. You will see political campaigns, I predict, funded to get people elected to office to further this scheme and to change the laws and ordinances of the town and the county, if necessary, to further this scheme. So be aware and be on alert, because I predict that will be coming. If this courthouse is located at this Kmart location, and that seems to be, it's either this or the Kmart, not even out to the government center. That's what is being proposed. Can you just see the jokes and all that will be made about this town? I can see, and the judges may, I guess that's one of the things I can get away with a little bit, hopefully, by being retired as an attorney. But I can just see this interstate highway Kmart courthouse with its shopping center judges serving Food City justice. And you can just see the taunts and the jokes that we made about this. And this town will become, that part of it will become a laughing stock. And we will be a town for sale and a county for sale. That will be our legacy. And we will have been bought and sold, paid for, and paid for if we do not take a stand. The beauty, honor, vitality, and integrity of this town are at stake as never before. Continuing chipping away at the integrity of the town will result in the integrity of this town forever. In closing, I'm reminded with a fellow comrade, Mr. Dickie Kaiser, commander of the American Legion, who served honorably in Vietnam, lost a great buddy there, and many others, who fought for the integrity of this nation and this town, who fought for the right of all citizens should be treated equally, not where they had a bow tie or no tie, not what they had in their pocket or where they had nothing or no pockets at all. And I'm also reminded of General MacArthur, and I may not quote him exactly, of his closing remarks when he retired, when he went to the West Point where he had graduated. And he was talking about this old ballad, Barracks Ballad, and he said that because he was so connected, I guess, to his comrades, but his last moments, that he would always remember the core, the core, the core. So along that line, I would suggest to you that when you go to sleep each night, and when you represent the citizens of this town and what you should feel is the right thing to do for this town, you remember the words just before you go to sleep. Integrity, integrity, integrity. And I suggest to you that if you do this, then you will do what is necessary to see that the honor and integrity of this town is kept, and you will see what is reasonably necessary to partner with this county to see that that courthouse and our judicial center are kept here in town, and our judicial center and integrity is kept intact, and that you will continue to be proud to be an American and proud to be an American living in this beautiful town of Abingdon, Virginia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emmett.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Dickie Kaiser.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, member of the council. I'm here as commander of VFW Post 1994 with an open invitation. Certainly, we hold our meetings the first Thursday of every month. That we have like a food thing. We eat some food and then have a meeting. The food at 6, a meeting at 7. So open invitation. But there's a young man that lives in Herndon, Virginia. I was dispatched to come here tonight on a moment's notice when mail couldn't come because of health issues. And this young man is Herndon, Virginia, but there's a national drive. He's collecting signatures for combat veterans. Nothing to gain other than the number and show allegiance to the veterans. And there's nothing, this is very loose at this time, but his plan is to come to this area and collect as many signatures as he can. So I'm just here to inform you all of it and possibly suggesting for a good venue if this comes to pass, and just thank you for the consideration. So that's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I want to point out to the audience and to the town council, Mr. Kaiser is also the chairman of the BVU board, and I can attest he's doing a fine job.
well, and the same, Mr. Mayor. So,
Thank
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council, the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to any of the minutes? If not, we'll approve them all together.
I'll move we approve.
Motion by Mr. Bradley to approve the minutes of the June 20th, 2019 work session, July 1, 2019 regular meeting, and the July 18th, 2019 work session. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Quetch. Any discussion? Kim, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
Mayor Craig?
Aye. The next item on the agenda is a resolution of the council regarding the Washington County Courthouse. Mr. Moran.
Yes, this resolution is being presented just as a statement by the council that there have been some discussions in some of the public settings. Just could be some, whether it's misinformation or miscommunication or maybe perceived opposition of the town through previous discussions of a parking facility downtown. This resolution just simply states publicly that the town council is not opposed to that, and if that was the path that the county would take, that we would work with them cooperatively in good faith, just to try to help them achieve that goal. And that's all this states. It's not anything other than just trying to clarify.
Do we have the resolution here? Would somebody read it?
Sure, you want me to read it? Okay. I'll go ahead and read it, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like me to. Okay. A resolution of the council for the town of Abingdon regarding the Washington County Courthouse. Whereas the town of Abingdon is the county seat of Washington County, and all of its residents pay taxes therein amounting to a substantial portion of the county's total tax revenue. And whereas the county courthouse is located in the heart of downtown Abingdon on Main Street, which serves county residents outside of its own corporate limits in addition to town residents. And whereas the county has explored potential solutions for a new courthouse, which includes renovation of the existing courthouse, new construction, and adaptive reuse of an existing facility. And whereas the county has held several public information meetings to gather feedback from county residents on proposed solutions. And whereas there have been previous discussions with the county and town regarding construction of parking facilities downtown to support the existing courthouse. And whereas the council for the town of Abingdon does not oppose the construction of a parking garage or lots as part of a renovation plan for the existing courthouse, and will work cooperatively with county officials if this option is selected. And now therefore be it resolved that the council for the town of Abingdon requests that if the county decides the existing courthouse is to be renovated, the town will work with the county in good faith in accordance with town code and ordinances.
Thank you very much. Okay, council, what's your pleasure on the resolution?
Mr. Mayor, council members, I think that ordinance resolution as read is okay, but I don't think it goes far enough. The courthouse decision is soon to be taken by the Board of Supervisors. That's going to be of utmost importance to the future of the town of Abingdon and its residents, and therefore I would like to add to this resolution a preference on the part of the town council for retaining the courthouse in its present location. So I'm asking to add to that resolution a preference on the part of the town council to retain the courthouse where it is.
Okay, let's, is that a motion by you, Al?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the motion by Mr. Bradley is to express a preference for renovating the courthouse. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Mrs. Patterson. Any discussion?
I mean, that's kind of, that wasn't something that we were privy to before. I'm not sure I feel comfortable making a decision just after hearing it read. It just seems a little quick to change what we already had in our packet. I mean, that's just me, but.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I don't think there's a lot of time, Mr. Webb. That's probably the reason why Mr. Bradley wants to ask that today.
And as far as I know, the Board of Supervisors is taking up, or did take up, the question of whether to put a referendum on the ballot in November, starting at 6 o'clock tonight, so they may have already voted.
Yeah. I mean,
Previously, the council has expressed a preference not to take a position on the courthouse. That's my only comment. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion? Kim, call a roll, please.
Mr. Bradley.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Nay.
Mr. Webb.
Nay.
Ms. Patterson.
Aye.
Mayor Craig.
No. Okay, now we'll take up the resolution as it was drafted. Is there a motion we approve the resolution?
I would make a motion to approve it as it was drafted in the packet originally.
And I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Webb to approve the resolution as drafted, second by Ms. Quetch. Any discussion? Kim, call a roll, please.
Mr. Bradley.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Ms. Patterson.
Aye.
Mayor Craig.
Aye. Okay, the resolution is adopted. Petitions, public hearings, and first reading of ordinances none, second readings none, considerations of bids. Sarita, oh, Chuck, are you gonna do this?
Yeah, I'm not sorry.
Well,
I hate to disappoint you.
I tell you, you sure aren't.
You're stuck with me instead of Sarita.
You're older and uglier, I'll tell you that
Him
right
and the
now.
chief are representing all of them.
Definitely uglier and probably definitely older. But here, I do have a consideration of bids for purchase of a dump truck. As far as what the dump truck is, I don't know the specifics. I do know that it's for 5-year terms, what we asked for. The collateral would be the truck itself. It's for semi-annual interest payments and an annual principal payment, and the total truck cost is $93,311. This has already been approved in the budget. This is just securing the financing for that purchase. We went out and solicited, we had got 5 bids back. We also used VML Vaco to get a bid. They went out and reached out to like 20 different banks. So they give us their best ones that they received. And then we had 4 others that had expressed interest in bidding on the opportunity to provide this financing. My recommendation is that we accept the lowest interest rate provider that we receive, and that would be First Bank and Trust. The interest rate was 2.75%, which was the lowest amount that we received. And my recommendation to the council is that we authorize the town manager to and myself to sign the appropriate documents to go ahead and proceed with this financing for the purchase of this dump truck.
Was this the lowest bid on the trucks? You had
Yeah,
bids?
the 90, yeah, they got that's the.
You want me to address
Yeah,
that?
go ahead.
Okay, so we've got the backup documentation from the department. There was one bid that was slightly lower by about $3,800. And based on the staff's recommendation and the equipment and the type of engine that's in there, they've had better success. Because a lot of times when you put these out for bid, you can't always get apples to apples, or else you're just doing a spec and then everything goes out. And a lot of times they have territories and only one certain kind. But we've got significant backup documentation from the department that I felt comfortable, based on the financing, that it wasn't a huge variance. Because I did actually ask that question of the staff prior to reviewing this and approving it. So it would have been the second lowest. The second one was an $89,500, whereas the one that we would be accepting would be $93,311. I believe, well, this gets really technical, but there's a 12-foot. The dump bed is a 12-foot with air tailgate and 6-inch extension slide, where the other one has a 10-foot don't ask me what that means,
bigger.
but apparently it's more favorable for the other one, so. And if Sarita was here, she would probably.
And really don't ask me what it is. I just ran the numbers.
But Mike Rourke, the superintendent of wastewater, and Sarita both, I mean, she
I
concurred.
know what it is. That Kenworth, it's a hobble, so I tell you that. I used to
Okay.
drive down dump truck.
He might have ridden one,
He probably,
so.
Cam, do we
these-
need to take, excuse me, Cindy, go ahead.
These were in, this information was in our packet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was 3
Well,
bids in it.
Yes.
Was the email in the packet?
Yeah.
Oh, it was in the packet?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's-
I apologize, I printed off a different
No,
one.
that's
so-
okay.
Okay.
Cam, do we need to take these up separately, the financing and the award of the bid, or we do it
You
together?
can do it together, I think.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, then I'll entertain a motion for the award of the bid and for the
And we
financing.
can announce it. Yeah.
I don't have bid documents, what they were. Yeah. Do we want to do that contingent upon? Or just run this too? That's what I asked, so. I didn't want you to. I doubt it because this is the way they've done it in the past, because they're not always apples to apples. But. I think it's this. You want to see what it says first? The town attorney is recommending before we, can we go ahead and do the interest rate at least, Cam?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, assuming that the bank would let us lock into an interest rate before we decided on.
No, that's true.
I think the interest rate would apply to anything that you would buy. If it goes
Cam
down lower,
was
the
con-
price would go down lower.
Cam was concerned, I did not see the bid documents, Cam was concerned that the bid documents would allow the council the authority to grant an award that was not the low bid. In the past, I think they have done it this way. I don't know if the bid document is actually in the packet, though. The bid document itself was not in the packet.
Cam, can we approve?
You know
it
what?
if-
Why don't we, can we come back to it at the end of the meeting, because by the time I can obtain it.
Whatever you want to do, we
Yeah.
can approve it contingent upon.
That's what I wanted, but I can probably get the bid document.
Let's just
Okay.
wait till, let's just wait till the end and do it.
Yeah.
What,
yeah.
what did he say?
Wait till the end and do it. I'll be able to obtain the bid documents. And we'll be able to
And-
get it by
and
the
if
end.
the-
Is it all right with the council if we move this to the end of the agenda?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay,
And if we could, we'll discuss it then, won't we?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Reports from the town manager, presentation regarding new bus routes serving town of Abingdon by Mountain Links Transit, formerly District 3 Governmental Cooperative, David Richardson and Molly Steffi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Vice Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight and provide you an update. As you may recall, we came to you in April with discussing the issue of the trying to get the proper local match funding for the bus system. We had operated a 2-bus system since the mid-90s, and at the request of previous town council and administrators, we had expanded to 4-bus system when Johnson Memorial opened, and we operated that. In 2013, we had a transportation transportation plan that was implemented, required by the state, and they would take a look at each of the municipalities and give us recommendations on the system. At that time, they had recommended that Abingdon expand to a 2-loop system, 1 loop serving the east part of the town and the other serving the west part of the town, with 2 buses remaining to augment that service. And so we have been working with the council with the plan to implement this in the fall. We don't have a final plan of what it would look like. We did give the town the figures for the local match, and that was approved, and we appreciate the opportunity for that. At this point, the plan is, as the construction at exit 17 would greatly impact this route, we want things to somewhat settle down, and I'm not sure what the timeline is on that.
End of October.
End of October, okay.
That's the timeline right now if it doesn't rain.
Right. Okay, so we're at a point that we're ready to implement that. I think we'll wait until for a specific date. I'm not ready tonight to give a date, but we would communicate that with you all and find a appropriate way to roll that out and let the public know. But we want to just at this point provide an update to you. We also provided we used to do this, and for many years was out of the business of providing transportation to the Highlands Festival, but we were back into that and operated 2 and 3 buses during the course of the festival. And I think we had for the first time we had about 1,000 people who took the opportunity to ride that, and so we offered that at no fare, and offered the no fare to the residents as well on the regular system during that week. So that was well received. And I think we're working with the Busker Fest.
We're doing Busker Fest on the 31st of the month, so we'll be doing that too.
So we're looking for opportunities such as that to. This is your system. We're just here to operate it, and we want to operate it the way you want to see your system, how you want your system to look. So this was one of the steps to give the public an opportunity to hear what we have in mind, and hopefully if others have some input, or the council does, then we can give us some guidance on that. And I can answer any questions, hopefully.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do. Would you mind telling the public what you offer, kind of in a brief, tiny nutshell, so
Right.
they've got it on record?
Okay, we are the public transit provider for the Mount Rogers Planning District, except for the city of Bristol, which operates its own system. So each locality can essentially purchase as many hours of service that they wish. As I mentioned, we've been partnering with the town of Abingdon since the mid-90s to operate a public transit system. And so this particular system, and each locality can tailor that to their particular needs. The local match is essentially based on the number of hours of service per week. You will be expanding from 88 hours to 180 hours.
Can I kind of shorten that and ask this? How much do you charge based on mileage, or do you charge the folks that ride the Link system?
It's 50 cents per boarding.
Okay. And I did think I saw a new bus, and it looks sharp, so
Yes, we have
it
new.
keeps going up and down by my
We
house.
have new
That's cool.
blue buses.
Yeah, I
now.
know it. I saw they're
They
beautiful.
stand out more.
Yeah.
No, they do.
Well, you need to hop on it sometime.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. I'll drive my truck.
We do have the town service, but we also have the buses that go from counties, and we provide other senior medical transportation and stuff like that to the citizens.
I'm just independent, that's all.
We're just there
If
when.
I get there, then I have to need it, I'll use it.
That's what
Thank
we
you all
say.
for
It's
that
like,
service.
So the buses run a route through town,
Yes, sir, they do.
and that's a set route, and everybody can find out when.
For right now, it's an hour loop, and it's got set bus stops, and it does have a schedule that it follows, hitting the main points throughout the town. And then we have the buses that run on the east and the west that are on a loop, and then we have another bus that runs around picking up those who are not along the routes.
So it's that's what we found is trying to balance efficiency with and a higher level of service. We tend to serve a number of people, as you might imagine, with persons with disabilities. We have a number of people that's seniors or people that has chosen no longer to drive, and so most of those folks are not physically able to get to a bus stop. So we try to provide as close to their house as possible.
And I did call you one time, we talked about that gap it's out in the county, and someday maybe that'll get resolved as well, so I really appreciated you talking to me about that.
Right,
And thank
yeah.
you. Hope we can, because there's disabled people out in the county too, so.
Right.
And they want to come into Abingdon.
They do, and when they
Yeah.
come in, they'll
trade.
they will. They'll spend their
Yeah,
money.
they will.
They'll go to the restaurants, and you end up getting the food tax revenue. And so-
Well, you just keep working on that if you don't mind, sir.
Right, no,
Thank you.
I will,
I appreciate
absolutely.
your diligence.
Thank you, appreciate your all support.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Okay.
presentation.
Okay.
We haven't heard any complaints about it.
No.
Well, there will be. I don't know, sometimes people don't like change, and what we'll be doing is implementing a change, so, they're like, why are we paying for people to complain? But, we think we have a pretty good plan in place, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hard work. Okay, the next item on the agenda is presentation regarding updated funding strategy for the Meadows Sports Complex and infrastructure. Mr. David Rose. Hello, David.
How are you, Mr. Mayor?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I have got copies of this. I don't know if it's going to be up on the screen or not, but I'll make sure I have this.
Come and get him out. Yeah. Oh, you got it, okay.
I have some extras as well, if anybody else in the audience
Okay.
wants.
Does anybody in the audience want a copy as well? This gentleman in the Oriole shirt right here.
Is that enough right there? Mr. Mayor, you want me to wait for Mr. Morani and,
I think he's trying to make a contact.
okay, so just go ahead. Okay, again, thank you, the opportunity to be here. You know me, I thank David Rose from Davenport, appreciate it. I will not be too long, I promise, because I know I can be
Take your
wordy.
time.
But if you would, just turn to page 1. Hard to believe, but I was here back in April, towards the end of the month, 25th, and we met and talked about the project, the fiscal standing of the town. You may recall Treasurer Parker was with us at the time as well, and we were down below talking about both this project, like I said, and overall the town's financial capacity. I mentioned at the time that I would be back and give you an update on the project as we understood it, as well as the marketplace. And so here we are today to give you that summer update, if you would. Having said that, if I could just take off script for a moment about the interest rates. The interest rates today dropped more than they have in 2 years in one day. If you haven't seen it, the stock market, if you look at the Dow Jones, dropped about 750 points today. So clearly we're in a slide over the last week or so. And that is the only saving grace is that it's actually good for us if you are a borrower, meaning us, the town, because interest rates are down, and I'll show you that in a few moments. And that's part of a little bit of our presentation discussion today. So with that said, going back on page 2, as you may be aware, I think y'all are, the town has drawn down about $4 million on the $10 million line of credit that we established back in 2016. That road construction, the improvements, of course, are well underway, and the private development work continues, and y'all see that every day, and I see that maybe every couple weeks when I'm here. Having said that, we are on track, again, when I say we, I'm talking about the town, on track to receive revenues as early as this October from the project. And that is, of course, here in calendar year 2019, but we think of it from fiscal years. So in the fiscal year 2020, we're expecting to get some revenues as early as this October, November, which again, Chuck could add to it if you'd like. And then finally, the project completion is still on target for mid-calendar year 2020. So, with that said, on page 3, we had a plan of finance, or I should say we have a plan of finance, and that has been moving along very nicely. It was the $10 million that we competitively established with Carter Bank and Trust in that summer of 2016. Hard to believe it was 3 years ago already. And as I mentioned, we've drawn down some $4 million on the way to 10. The project then calls for us ultimately terming out, as we call it, upwards of that 10 million to permanent financing. What do we mean by permanent financing? We mean roughly 20-year fixed rate debt, because again, this right now is a short-term instrument. Also, as you know, we're bidding on the sports complex is expected to happen roughly over the next 6 months or thereabouts. You know that better than I do. But again, we expect that to happen sometime in the balance of this calendar year into the next calendar year. And then the repayment of all of this, of course, is expected to come from those new incremental revenues that we spent a lot of time talking about. The good news is we know of certain revenues that are already coming in come October, and we know that there'll be other revenues, as we said, through 2020. So with all of that, one of the things that we wanted to talk to you about and take it a step further from April is considering fixing, if you would, some of that debt that we basically have to term out while interest rates are so favorable. So if you go to the next page, this method, the Meadows, you can see sort of what we're thinking about here. On the left-hand side, we go back to 2000, and on the right-hand side, we've taken that circular or the oblong in that right there and said, let's magnify that. And you can see here that right now, and that's without excluding the last day or two, interest rates, these are the long-term rates that we're talking about, are at or lower than they've been in years. So we are finding...
This is 1.9%?
Yes, sir. I know, it's almost, it's staggering. It is. And what makes it, Mr. Mayor, so amazing is if I were here, and maybe I was, roughly last December, the Federal Reserve was raising rates at that time and talked about the calendar year that we're in right now, raising it further. So just give you a sense of this, and I know it's a lot, but they have a thing called a benchmark interest rate. They use a 10-year treasury. United States 10-year maturity. And at that time, it moved as high as close to 3.5%. As of today, that's at 1.8%. That's the 10-year treasury. We're talking, this year is a little different. This is a 20-year municipal rating, if you would, which is what we borrow off of. But that 10-year is like a bellwether. And so it has shocked all of us. And again, for those of us who are, meaning for you, thinking about possibly when do you want to fix this, our argument is going to be, and I'm just going to jump right ahead, I think I know y'all well enough, is to say, you know what, we've got 10 million that we ultimately, at least this project's going to be in that range. Why don't we take, our recommendation with your staff, is take 7.5 million. Let's term that out now while rates are much lower than anything we ever estimated. And then once we get bids in, whether they're 2.5 million, 1.5, or 3.5, whatever it is, then we can figure out how to finish the last part of that, we'll call it, that final cleanup, if you would. Ideally, it'd be 10 million or less, but I think I remember the vice mayor, or maybe it was you, councilwoman, said, what if we go above, I think it was you, vice mayor, said, what if we go above that? What does that mean? And I said, basically, what we've got to then do is we'll just borrow, if we need to, if you accept the bids, the extra million or whatever that number is. Now, the good news here is if indeed, let's say, the overall cost of the project comes in higher and you still want to do that, you don't reject the bids, the fact is, we're going to basically probably be in a mode, short of a surprise, to have the interest rates lower than we expected. So our debt service will still come down. So we may be in a better position, even if the cost of the project goes up $1 million or thereabouts, because the overall cost of the interest on all of it is so much lower than anything we planned going back a year, 2 years ago. So that's the important point. So again, this is sort of dropping like it's a nasty and a good ski slope if you want to think about the right-hand side. So that's the important thing. So on page 5, this really just is what I was saying, but I think it's an important point here for y'all to understand, and that is this. We have set up the cash flows such that the debt service, if we convert that $7.5 million, the debt service will be such that it's going to be lower than even the known revenues that we expect to come in here in this fiscal year and the next fiscal year. So what we're not going to see, and we've worked with Chuck and with Mr. Morani and with Cam as well, is to be in a mode where we're not going to be adding a burden when it comes time to do the 2021 fiscal year budget. We're not going to be adding a burden to the 2021 fiscal year budget by the cash flows of this recommended strategy. That's going to be important. It's not going to add to that burden because we see more than ample revenues coming in here in 2020, meaning the fiscal year. Plus, we don't see a first payment on this till 2021, fiscal year 2021. So we're just going to have
And that's the reason
dollars.
that you're recommending 7.5 rather than 10.
Yes, for that, as well as we don't really know, of course, it's only speculation, what the final cost will be of the overall project. So that way, we don't ever overborrow. Let me say this. It's hard to imagine overborrowing when we know what the road costs and we know within reason, that's not my world, what the sports complex would look like. Even at a minimum, $7.5 million will not be an overborrowing. And if y'all think it might be, which we don't sense that, we could scale it back a little to maybe $7 million. But the idea is, let's get a good portion of this $10 million locked in while rates are better than anything we could have expected. The last thing I think is important too, if I could, is we also believe that from an optics standpoint, going and terming out a good portion of it sends a message to those in the development community that y'all are serious about doing this, that you're going to indeed move forward with the sports complex, and that has the potential for any possible folks that might be on the fence in terms of development to say, okay, we know the town is serious about this. Now, one last point, I know I'm throwing a lot at y'all. We could still lock it in and do all that, and the question is, can we then retire the debt early if we wanted to? Can we prepay it if we wanted to? The answer is yes. There'd be a penalty down the road, but you can always do that. I don't want you to think that that debt will have to be out there for 20 years. That's not the case. I mean, you can prepay the debt. We're going to make sure that's in the ability to do this. So, just another moment or two, and I'll be done. Page 6 and 7 is just the sort of the next steps, and what we're hoping is that if y'all are comfortable tonight, it's August 5th, we would ask you that you give us the ability to work with your staff to move forward and to competitively procure bids from banks and brokerages. We would then do that here in the middle of August. It takes a little bit of time to put all the things together. We would be ideally back at the September 18th meeting, and that would be the meeting that we would present to you what we found, and if we indeed have a recommendation to proceed. It's possible we may not like what we get back, and that'll be one of the things we'll let you know if we don't feel like we've gotten back the things that meet our goals and objectives. But if we do, then the balance of September,
would be spent working towards pulling all the documents together, and we would see ourselves closing on this sometime by the end of October. As I understand it, because we've already gone out and had a public hearing as it related to the initial $10 million that we did, we're not required to have a public hearing for this because we're not adding any new debt. We're just converting it from a short term to a long term. If I'm wrong, I'm not the bond counsel. Cam and his colleagues, as well as bond counsel, which is Sands Anderson, we will turn around and make sure we have the right documents all approved by y'all, whether it's in the September 18th meeting or more than likely in the October meeting. That's why we're thinking closing at the end of October, but getting hopefully some determination in the September meeting. With that said, once you end up getting the bids, even if it's delayed, that's fine on the sports complex, then we'll know if you approve those bids, how much that last financing, the takeout, if you would, has to be at that time, and we'll do that accordingly. So the one last thing is while we, let's say, take in this $7.5 million, and we use that to perhaps pay down that first $4 million, the other monies that are sitting there, they will earn interest, and we think they'll earn interest rate fairly close to the borrowing rate. So that's going to be something that'll be kind of, we call efficient. So we'll have some cost of carry, but we don't see having a lot of cost of carry on that because, again, rates are so favorable borrowing, and the reinvestment rates are, again, still somewhat strong, given the way what we call the interest rates from year 1 out to year 30. They're very, very sort of even, if you would. So probably more than you want to know about interest rates, but happy to answer your questions, Randy. I don't know if I said that right, but that's.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, the payments per month on $7.5 million, do you have roughly what that'll be?
I do. We were thinking annually, if you use, and I purposely did a high interest rate. I said if it were something along the lines of, let's say, 3% or 3.25% fixed rate, that's probably just, I'm rounding off here purposely, like $250,000. And so the way we see the timing of that, as I said, more than likely the first payment will occur in 2021 fiscal year, and we see that pretty much being what we call interest only. So again, it'll probably be around that amount for the whole of that fiscal year, but we're going to have both about 8 or 9 months in this year that we have, meaning 2020 fiscal year, plus the 2021 fiscal year. Both of those sets of revenues will be there to offset, let's say, that roughly $250,000. And we see that as being a very solid margin over and above that $250,000, which is why I said, Vice Mayor, that I don't see this being a burden for the 21 fiscal year from your general budget.
And I just wanted to clarify something, just to make sure that I heard you correctly.
Yes.
And kind of make sure this is right, the public heard it correctly. You were talking about $7.5 million for the sports field complex, but I think what we're doing here is the $4 million we've already spent out. So 4 plus 3.5, is that what you're recommending, or are you recommending 7? Could you just clarify that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. So what we're really saying is, irrespective of how you want to break up the costs of the 10 million that you have, we're just saying, let's do 7.5 of the 10.
Okay.
And
just to lock into the better interest rate.
Just to lock in the
Right,
better
yeah.
interest rates, that's right,
Mhm,
that's right.
what I got.
So it's
That's
not
what I
necessarily
thought I
that versus
heard,
that.
but just so nobody perceives that we're doing 7.5 on the sports field complex yet. Okay.
That's exactly
3.5
right.
so far.
You've
Okay.
got it, yes,
Thank you for clarifying that.
delighted, yeah.
Any other questions, council? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rose. We appreciate your update.
Thank you.
So I guess, Mr. Mayor, the only question is, are you comfortable if we move forward, and that's what we want to?
Well, I don't, yes, I am.
Yeah, as long as there's a consensus.
Do we need a consensus, or do we need a motion?
I don't know,
Do you think it's to direct David in his firm to start work on this? Do we need a motion, anything to do that? Or just direct me to work with him to do that?
Right, I think that's within your power
Okay.
probably to.
Okay, as long as there's no objections from
There's no
the
objections.
town
Why don't
council.
I just move, we authorize the $7.5 million?
We can build.
Can we do that?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Why don't I just move, we
And I'll
authorize the
second
$7.5
that.
million?
All right,
Okay,
motion by
financing.
Mr. Bradley,
All right.
to authorize moving ahead with $7.5 million, second by Ms. Patterson. Is there any discussion?
I think we just need to move forward. I think that's what we're doing, so thank you.
The
Kim,
motion,
call the roll,
is-
please.
The motion, Kim, is to authorize Mr. Moran, to authorize Davenport to issue an RFP, to banks to obtain interest rates.
Financing for $7.5 million.
Wasn't that what I
Now,
said?
you accept all that as a.
Wasn't that what I said?
Yours was the abridged
That's
version.
exactly what he said.
That was the attorney version.
You got that, Kim?
That's what you said, that's why.
Kim's got it. Any discussion? Okay, Kim, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms.
Aye.
Quetch?
Sorry, aye.
That's okay. Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Thank
Thank
you
y'all
very much, David.
Thank you.
Appreciate
well.
you coming down.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a consideration of a request from Sustained Abingdon Committee to remove an appointed voting member.
Are we in another session?
Mr. Moran.
Okay, well, actually,
You can move it to the end.
I'll just say it publicly. So the committee had asked this particular individual, his name is Matt Doan. There's just been an attendance issue. It's not reflective of him in any way other than the fact that for whatever reason, the participation for this individual has been unable to fulfill that attendance requirement. So the Sustained Abingdon Committee had asked the town council if they could replace that person. So we don't have a replacement yet that I'm aware of, but we would like to vacate the position right now. So just asking the council for a motion to, I know it sounds bad, but just to remove Matt Doan as a member of the Sustained Abingdon Committee so we can go about and solicit an invitation to responses to see if anybody's interested.
Does any, yeah, go ahead.
That's
Other
all.
people may not want to do this, but I don't mind.
Yeah.
I move that we authorize the Sustained Abingdon Committee to remove Mr. Doan, and replace.
Well, I don't know, that was
I think we have to do that.
I don't know if the town council appointed the individual to the committee. I think Cam is saying that the town council has to,
Yeah.
I think that's what the committee is asking the council to do.
yeah.
Yeah, we appointed them, so.
Yeah, okay, is that what you were saying, Mayor?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were asking me to have
I'm
them.
making a motion to do that.
Okay, gotcha.
I'd second that.
Okay.
Second by Mr. Webb. Any discussion?
Discussion, Mayor, I would like to just ask if he's been properly notified.
We understand, and there is a memo from staff in your packet, that he has been notices and things, so.
Okay.
Okay. No further discussion. Kim, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Old business and matters not on the agenda. Any old business and matters not on the agenda?
That just happened to be, I couldn't, okay, never mind, no.
Never mind, okay. Council member reports. Mr. Bradley, do you have a report?
No, I don't have anything.
Donna?
No, sir.
Cindy?
I just wanted to report that I've been attending my meetings as I'm supposed to and doing my job.
Good girl. Derek?
Nothing at this time.
And I don't have a report. Okay, appointments to boards and committees. We have a couple of, that'll be in closed session, so,
Before we go into closed session, Mayor, if you don't mind, I'll just revisit that one issue we were dealing with earlier. I have yet to get my hands on the actual document after consulting with the town attorney, the document that went out for the invitation of bids. By statute, if a purchase is under $100,000, it does give the municipality, and jump in here if I'm incorrect, but it does give the municipality the ability to just purchase the goods or services. But it really depends on, Cam's concern was, it depended on how that was worded when it went out to the, so normally as a practice, this is something we have done, but it doesn't hurt to see what that document said, you know, with not having the department here. We would prefer just to wait and withhold on any action until the next meeting, so.
Do you want us to table it, or do you not do anything?
Can you do it without us? No? Okay.
Well,
You wanna make a
there's been a
motion?
document that's been sent out, and so either the council, my opinion would be the council would have to reject all the bids, or we would just,
Well, it just depends on what the document says.
It depends
I
on
think
what the
we can
document
clear it up
says.
as soon as we
Well,
can see it.
let's just table it, how
Yeah.
about that?
And
Yeah.
I think this would be something that would be appropriate to take up at work session.
Right.
If we table it, then we can take it up there. It shouldn't
Okay.
take.
yeah.
There's a motion, we table that.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second
Motion by Mr.
that.
Bradley to table consideration of bids with the dump truck, second by Ms. Patterson. Any discussion? Okay, Kim, call a roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Now we need a motion to go into closed session for 2 matters.
Mayor Craig, before you do that, if I may, please, I did have something else I wanted to ask, and it was pertaining to Mr. Doan. I don't see that in my packet, the notification. I don't have it in my packet. Could you
It was an
please
email, so
provide
I will
that?
send it to you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right.
I looked it over and I didn't think I saw it.
Well, I didn't see it either, but
Okay.
anyway.
But thank you for everything you do anyway, Kim. I'm sure that I just,
All of them together? Okay. All right, I move that the Abingdon Town Council convene in closed session to discuss the following as permitted by Virginia Code, Section 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel or briefing by staff or consultants about probable future litigation, specifically for the purpose of discussing the EEOC letter, as well as permitted by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 for purpose of considering applications for appointment to EDA and/or sinking spring cemetery committee.
Okay, motion by Mr. Webb to go into closed session, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Quetch. Any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Aye. Okay, council. Kim, I guess we want you and Jim
here. Yeah.
Did everybody go home?
Looks like it.
Not everybody.
We didn't have any tonight.
Okay, is there a motion we go back into open session?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Patterson,
Second.
second by Mr. Bradley. Any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Aye. Derek, you gotta do something, don't you?
Let's see. I move that the town council certify that in the closed session just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in closed session and lawfully permitted to be discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion.
For a second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Quetch. Kim?
Mr. Bradley, do you so certify?
I so certify.
Ms. Quetch?
I so certify.
Mr. Webb?
I so certify.
Ms. Patterson?
I so certify.
And Mayor Craig?
I so certify. Okay, we need to appoint some people to committees. Do we have a motion?
I don't do it. All right, I'll move, we approve, we appoint Robert Trevorrow and Ernest Daniels to the Economic Development Authority.
Motion by Mr. Bradley,
I'll second that.
second by Ms. Patterson, Vice Mayor Patterson. Any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye,
And Mayor Craig?
Aye. Let's see, I believe that completes our agenda.
except for the sinking springs, and we're gonna table that for now.
Well, we just
Oh,
don't
we've
have to
already-
make an appointment.
We don't have to
Just
make an
gonna leave that
appointment,
alone.
okay.
Okay, that's all we got. Anything else, anybody?
Let's
Okay,
have a good evening.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.